Okay, so we're always hearing about what to eat, right? Low carb, high protein, all that stuff for managing weight. But have you ever stopped to think if when you eat could be just as important? It's kind of fascinating, isn't it?
It really is. And well, that's pretty much the core question we're digging into today. We're doing a deep dive into this recent 5-year study. It suggests meal timing might be a, well, surprisingly big factor for maintaining a healthy weight.
Exactly. And this isn't just, a guess. It's based on actual research. They looked at over 7,000 adults aged between 40 and 65, part of a big project in Spain called GCAT Genomes for Life.
And the researchers gathered detailed info from them back in 2018, and then they followed up 5 years later just to see what changed.
Right. So their mission here is to unpack what they actually found. We're really focusing on that connection they reported between when people eat like breakfast earlier, longer time fasting overnight, and having a healthier body weight, like a lower BMI.
Yeah, and it's worth noting this research got support from the Lakisa Foundation, and it was published in the International Journal of Behavioral Nutrition and Physical Activity, which, focuses specifically on that link between behavior and nutrition.
Okay, let's get right into it then. The big headline seems to be this link. Early breakfast, longer fast overnight, lower BMI. Sounds simple, maybe. But what's going on underneath? Why would the timing actually matter so much?
Well, this is where it gets really interesting. It looks like it might have a lot to do with our body's internal clock, our circadian rhythms. The thinking is eating earlier might just line up better with these natural cycles. And if things are aligned, maybe our bodies are more efficient at burning calories or regulating appetite.
Ah, okay. So better alignment could lead to better weight management over time.
Potentially, yes. Luciana Ponsmuzo, who was involved in the research at ISGlobal, she's at IS Business School now, she mentioned that these findings do sort of echo other recent studies, but, and this is important, she also stressed we need more evidence to be really definitive.
Right, so it's not just about calories cut, but maybe when those calories come in matters because of our internal biology. That's a really neat idea.
Exactly. It's like our bodies have preferred times for certain tasks, including processing food.
Okay. That makes sense. Now, the study also looked into differences between men and women, which I thought was really telling.
Yeah.
What did they find there?
Yeah, they did see some interesting variations when they broke it down by gender. So on average, the women in this particular study group tended to have lower BMIs than the men.
Duh.
They were also more likely to stick to a Mediterranean diet, drink less alcohol, and they reported having more responsibilities around the house and caregiving.
Interesting mix of factors.
But there was also a finding that overall, the women in the study reported poorer mental health.
So a really complex picture there. Lots of things interacting.
Definitely.
But wasn't there also a specific subgroup of men they pointed out, the ones who ate their first meal really late?
Yes, that's a really key point about how diverse eating patterns can be. The researchers found this small group of men who didn't have their first meal until after 2 p.m., and they were fasting on average for about 17 hours overnight.
Wow, 17 hours.
Yeah, and what really stood out was that compared to others, this group generally had, well, less healthy habits overall. More likely to smoke, drink more alcohol, less physical activity, didn't follow the Mediterranean diet as closely.
Okay.
And there were also links to lower education levels and higher unemployment rates in that specific group.
And crucially, you didn't see that same pattern in women.
That's right. That particular combination, very late first meal, plus those other lifestyle factors, wasn't observed in any of the female subgroups.
That's a pretty stark difference. It really suggests that, at least for some men, eating late might be tangled up with a whole lot of other lifestyle choices.
It seems that way, yes.
This kind of naturally brings us to intermittent fasting. It's everywhere in weight loss talk. How does this study's focus on the overnight fast relate to, say, deliberately skipping breakfast?
That's a great question, and it's important to be clear here. This study was mainly looking at the natural fast people have between their evening meal and their breakfast the next day.
Right, not necessarily planned fasting.
Exactly. Most people weren't trying to do intermittent fasting in the way we usually think about it. However, there was that subgroup of men who essentially did practice a form of it by skipping breakfast regularly.
And what did they find for that group? Did skipping breakfast help with weight?
Well, interestingly, in this specific study, that pattern skipping breakfast didn't show a significant effect on their body weight.
Huh. That kind of goes against some of the hype, doesn't it?
It does seem to. And Camille Lassalle, another researcher from ISGlobal who co-authored the study, she pointed out something important. She mentioned that other intervention studies, one specifically looking at people with obesity, have found that intermittent fasting by skipping breakfast isn't actually any better for long-term weight loss than just cutting overall calories.
Okay, that's a really useful bit of context. Good to keep in mind with all the different diet advice flying around.
Absolutely.
Now, you mentioned earlier this research is part of a newer field called chrononutrition. Could you tell us a bit more about what that actually means?
Sure. Chrononutrition is, it's an emerging field, really, and it shifts the focus. It's not just about what foods we eat, but also considers when we eat them and maybe even how often.
Okay, the timing and frequency.
Exactly. Anna Palomar-Cross, another researcher involved who's now at IDEAP Geordie Goal, she highlighted how our bodies run on these internal clocks, these circadian rhythms. They manage all sorts of daily processes. And the idea is that eating patterns that are, out of sync with those rhythms, well, they might disrupt the whole system.
Like trying to operate machinery outside its optimal window.
That's a pretty good analogy, yeah. Our bodies might just be better prepared to handle food at certain times compared to others.
So it's about giving our bodies the fuel when they're best equipped to use it, not just the type of fuel itself.
Precisely. And, this study isn't happening in a vacuum. ISGlobal has been doing other work in chrononutrition. Some earlier research suggested that eating dinner and breakfast earlier might be linked to a lower risk for things like cardiovascular disease and type 2 diabetes.
Ah, so there are hints of broader health connections beyond just weight.
It seems that way, yeah. This link between meal timing and health keeps popping up in their research.
Okay. And just so we're all on the same page, the main measure of weight they used was BMI, body mass index. Can you just quickly explain what that is?
Sure thing. BMI, body mass index, it's a pretty standard calculation. It just uses your height and weight to give an estimate of body fat. It's not perfect, but it's a simple way to categorize weight status: underweight, normal, overweight, obese.
Got it.
So it's useful for these big population studies to get a general picture of weight trends.
Okay, so wrapping things up for you, our listener, this deep dive really highlights something interesting. This 5-year study suggests that the timing of our meals specifically, maybe eating breakfast and dinner a bit earlier, having that longer break overnight, might actually be linked to maintaining a healthier weight. It adds another layer beyond just the food, doesn't it?
That's definitely the key takeaway, yes. But it's really crucial to remember, while these findings are, quite intriguing and they fit with this growing field of chrononutrition, we do need more research. We can't just jump to making definitive, broad recommendations about meal timing for everyone based just on this.
Absolutely. Science is a process, right?
Right.
So this adds important pieces, but the puzzle isn't finished.
Well said.
So maybe something for you to think about. How do your own eating times line up with your day, with your sleep-wake cycle? Does hearing this make you wonder at all about tweaking those times and, what effect that might have on how you feel generally? Definitely some food for thought there.
Yeah.